When they make up lies and tell half-truths to assassinate your character and play the victim, and you go out and you own everything that happened to you, it's your story, it's your life. If they wanted to look better, they should have treated me better and acted better. Hello, truth tellers. Welcome back to the ADHD Scapegoat podcast, where we talk about everything ADHD and scapegoating. I'm Angie.
I'm Jeremy.
Today we're going to discuss smear campaigns. What a smear campaign is, why narcissists engage in smear campaigns, and signs you're on the receiving end, tactics they use to smear you, as well as some tips on how to deal and cope when this is happening to you. So I had no idea what a smear campaign was until I began doing my healing work. I innocently or naively would brush it off as gossip or someone talking behind my back, here or there. They just, again, my ADHD childhood experience was they didn't understand me. So maybe they were assuming something and gossiping, but it wasn't malicious, right? Just talking behind my back, which smear campaign is. It's gossiping and talking behind someone's back, but it goes much deeper than that. So in learning about it, I was kind of blown away that understanding of being the ADHD scapegoat throughout my childhood, it was a smear campaign my entire life. Things being said about me that weren't true, that were blamed on me and pointed to my character rather than this actual disorder that I had that needed support, right? Had you ever heard of a smear campaign before we started?
Yeah, but not necessarily in the context of family relationship. Right.
It's like, I think a lot of people would probably say politics or...
Yeah.
Like that's where you
right.
Just...
That's what I immediately think of when I hear smear.
Immediately making up lies, which is probably a good example.
Or something in the news cycle in general. It doesn't have to be political, but...
I mean, it's if you think of political commercials, like that's a really easy example of...
Right.
Gossiping, telling lies in order to get people on your side.
Yeah.
Right. So, what is the narcissist smear campaign? And when we refer to narcissism, it's narcissistic traits. There's some statistics, it's very high that almost no narcissists actually get diagnosed because they refuse to self-reflect. So we're basing this on the narcissistic traits and the behaviors that highly reflect. I mean, if you look at the whole list of narcissistic traits, just Google it. I will go over it sometime, but if you Google it and you can check off like every single box, you're there. So a narcissist smear campaign is a deliberate and calculated effort by a narcissist to tarnish someone else's reputation, credibility, or character. Pretty straightforward. So here are some signs that you're being targeted by a smear campaign. And I'm going to list them and also share some examples when we start talking about them. But so the first one is people turning against you. The second one is hearing stories and rumors about yourself. The third one is complete denial. And the fourth one is gaslighting. So the first one, when it comes to people turning against you, so the things you kind of want to pay attention to is if people start avoiding you without explanation, a conversation, kind of out of the blue, ghosting type behaviors with someone. It's very possible that the narcissist in yours or their life is telling a distorted narrative and painting you in a bad light. So, an example from my situation where this happened is, I've already talked about it a little bit. My younger sister just very slowly started cutting me out of her life, but it was like September of 2020. I had a FaceTime call with her and her boyfriend at the time. He had just gotten in some sort of car wreck, and she wanted to ask my advice to talk to him about, because he had an injury to his face that had stitches. And I was in a major car accident when I was 21, and I had, I can't even remember how many staples, 24 staples. How many did I have?
A lot of staples.
I had a lot of staples in my head, and I had a massive scar. But I did a lot of therapy on it. I did a lot of movement, and I used a certain product. So she wanted me to share that with him, and I think it was probably a way for her to have us connect and for him to see that I cared, kind of a thing. And so I was telling him, it's kind of painful, especially at first, to like break up the scar tissue. But I mean, my scar is you almost can't even see it. You can once I point it out and you get really close, but I worked really hard because it's like right on your face, and you don't want that to be necessarily the first thing people see. And he made a comment like, oh, and they were dating at that point for, since
6 months.
Yeah, something like that. And he said, oh, she ain't going anywhere. And kind of laughed, and I laughed, and I said, well, not if you don't treat her right. And I was just saying that as like a big sister, like, protective thing. And his response was like a scoff, and he got up and he like threw the phone, and she had to get it, and he was like stomping away and acting very like erratic. Oh, wait, I missed the part right before that. I stepped ahead. Sorry. So after I said that, I said, not if you don't treat her right. And she kind of did this face that she does, like, like, my sister's got my back, kind of a thing. And he told her to shut up in a way that made my skin crawl. And I immediately called it out. And I was like, that's not okay. And I was taken aback. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't necessarily prepared for it. And that's when he got up and threw the phone and walked away and started like huffing and puffing. And I was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah. And you could tell she was like confused and uneasy. And I could hear him talking in the background, like, he was like trying to argue and walk away and stuff, but he wouldn't like come to the phone. And I was like, does he have to say something? Like, what's going on? And she was like, no, don't worry about it, and we hung up. And after that point, I couldn't get in touch with her. I would text her. And then 5 days later, I'd text again. Did you get the text? Or, there were times where we had a FaceTime set up, a time that we scheduled for her to talk to my kids. She literally just didn't show up. So I'm sitting there with my kids holding FaceTime, and she just didn't show up.
Which was very unusual because she had a very close relationship with both of our boys, especially the older one. She was in the room when our younger one was born. So it was very unusual, but it was also, I think we kind of thought, okay, it's a new relationship. And so even though that was out of the norm, maybe we were giving her the benefit of the doubt a little bit, but that interaction that you had where it seemed like that was the tipping point.
Right.
Over just a very minor issue, I guess, if you want to call it.
I just was holding him accountable, saying you can't, like, that's not okay.
Right. But that was only, I believe at that point, was only the second interaction that you or I had with him. And that was only over FaceTime. We had one other FaceTime where she kind of introduced him to the family, all of your siblings. And even that one was a little shaky. I think you and I kind of looked at each other a couple of times and thought, afterward, we thought,
what's going on? Was he drunk or what? Like the things he was saying, which he definitely was drinking.
But again, we gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Right, we were like, there's nerves. He's meeting the whole family, like all the siblings. Let's chalk it up to that.
Right.
But yeah, as that behavior continued, it was, he's turning her against me. He's like saying things about me because I think in that moment, he understood that I would stand up for her. And he knew that I wouldn't allow him to treat her like that. So he had to get me out of the picture. So I find out later, this is part of the smear campaign when you're finally finding all this information that like comes to you, is I find out later that he was criticizing the kind of contact that me and my older sister were both trying to have with her. So if we were calling too much or at the wrong time. Like, don't they know that we're working? But the calls were, hey, I was just out on a walk thinking of you. Or I was like, oh, hey, one of the kids just said this and it made me think of you, or let's chat. Messages that were fine to leave. It's just staying in contact. And we know everybody has their own schedules. It's not like you had to answer your phone, but it's staying in contact. It's having a relationship, a long distance relationship, right? And so then it would be if we were, kind of getting burned out of constantly calling or constantly reaching out, and we would pull back a little, like, oh, now they're not calling at all. So like anything that we did, of course, was wrong. And why is she texting so much? I don't need to talk to my family all day. Well, come to find out, he has barely any connections with his family because of his toxic behavior. So,
and this is not just hearsay. These are things that we know he was saying about you or to you because he either admitted it or you were told directly through text messages, Facebook messages, etc.
Right. So the idea that any type of contact was to her being manipulated into her having a toxic relationship with us, that we were trying to manipulate her because we were trying to stay in contact with her. We talk to her too much, so that means that we don't think she can make her own decisions. Or, we ask her questions, so we're meddling. It didn't make sense, and it was so confusing, which is all the narcissistic behavior is very confusing to someone who is not narcissistic. So it's mind-blowing when you put it together and you go, oh my gosh, it's so obvious to see once you see it. You can't unsee it. And it's so malicious and insidious. And it becomes unconscious to them when they do it for so long. And it's obvious he's been doing this for a very long time. because it's second nature. It happens automatically. So anyway, it evolved all the way to her completely turning against me and having this narrative around my intentions and me not supporting their relationship when I really wasn't given an opportunity to even attempt to do that.
You attempted to support the relationship by checking on your little sister to make sure that she was safe and that she was in a healthy relationship.
And here's the thing, I don't need to support him. I need to support her. Once I see that she's happy and healthy and she is supported and she is in a loving relationship, I would welcome him. But he gave me zero time to trust him. Instead, he immediately gave me pause and reason to not trust him, right?
What's the quote? If someone shows you who they are?
If someone shows you who they are, believe them.
In this case, that holds true.
Yeah, I think it's Maya Angelou. So that led to her, being told those negative things about someone day in and day out and someone bashing my intentions, especially when she was a very kind person who is very empathetic and didn't have a malicious bone in her body. So, like I said, it's hard to understand the way a narcissist behaves or to even think someone would ever act like this when you yourself would never do that. So it's a naive way to enter the world and just believe that everyone is as good as you. And that's another reason why me and my older sister were constantly trying to empower her and let her know her worth so that she would be able to see those things and know she didn't deserve to be treated like that, right?
Right.
All right, we could go on and on and on. We'll go to the next one. So the second sign is hearing stories and rumors about yourself. So if you begin to hear rumors, false accusations about yourself that seem to come from nowhere and don't align with reality, like literally made up stuff was brought to me. Never said, never even thought, or talked to anyone about, was just said that I did. Which, again, often spread through gossip. But it's this constant pattern of a misrepresentation or a distortion of my words, twisting my words. Like when I was on the phone call with my older brother and I said, as the big brother, you need to step in and say something to her. Please contact her and make sure she's okay. I've been trying. Our older sister's been trying. Like, you need to step in and do something. And my words, he took my words and said to everyone else, Angie said that I needed to break them up. Now, if I could go back and change the way I phrased that, I probably would. Because now I know the person I was speaking to is not someone who cared about me like I cared about them. Well, first of all, I wouldn't talk to my older brother about it. That's the first thing. But the second thing is I would say it in a different way. And I still believe he would have said the same thing. Because there's nothing I say that's not going to be turned around and somehow made into my fault.
But being the scapegoat, the family scapegoat, that's what he was conditioned to do.
Right.
For your whole life.
Right. Right. And I have empathy for him because he was also the scapegoat at different points. he has always been my mom's golden child, but when my older sister was the golden child with my dad, he was often used, since he was the oldest, as the example. He was abused physically, mentally, emotionally by my father. And I think that's part of my mother's bond with him, was he was her firstborn and had to protect him and stay close to him because of the way my father treated him. So I understand that. And I even tried to defend him and support him many times, to which I was still belittled and made fun of. So that's fun. But I understand that he was treated poorly and he was scapegoated. There are many times that happened. And I think a lot of the things that he does are to push down the shame of that happening to him. I'm taking the route of the scapegoat who is not allowing that harm that was done to me for me to pass on to anyone else. He instead is acting on, oh, that was done to me. I need to do that and then some to protect myself and be better than my father at being an asshole. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's...
You're a cycle breaker.
Right.
He's perpetuating the...
He's keeping that generational trauma, and maybe he's doing less to his kids. My assumption, and from what I've seen, he's doing less. But I also am not behind closed doors and don't know. And that's a lot of where my father's behavior was hidden as well. I mean, people knew that my father was mean out in the public, but they didn't know the level to which the abuse was. So, but having your intentions by this group of people, my parents and my older brother, and then now this dude that my sister met online.
Dude.
I hate, it's very hard for me. I'm like really trying hard to call him a man because that's tough. But having people confront me or say things to me that have received this distorted message, or, you know, even when my older sister and my younger brother were coming to me and saying, you know, my older brother said this to them, or my dad said this to them, or mom said this, I was like, I don't even know what to say. That didn't happen. Period. Never happened. And initially it was met with, well, what happened? And I don't know. Like, I don't know what they're referring to. This is literally made up.
It became a game of telephone, really.
Well, because
you would take a concern to your older brother. He would then twist your words and take that to your mom and your dad separately, who would then take it to your younger sister and her boyfriend, and then it would get twisted, and then by the time it got back to you, it was a 180 of your intention and what you actually said.
Exactly. And so the example that I shared of, you know, me calling my older brother and him distorting and saying I told him to break them up. I was trying to break them up. Or my mother saying, you're meddling in their relationship. I don't think it's right. So I did the background check. That's the part I think that's the only part of what they're spewing that was actually reality.
Right. You did. So you witnessed concerning behavior. Your sister.
I witnessed concerning behavior by this new person. My sister's behaviors were
very out of character.
Very out of character.
She essentially broke off almost all contact with you. Once in a while she would respond to a text, but again, very out of character.
Very.
She quit her job that she had worked. She had gone back to school.
Right.
She had gotten a full-time job, moved to a different state to take a job doing the thing that she went to school for, and then within a year had quit that job and then moved further away from family with this person that you had then experienced, I guess, some red flags in the small amount of interactions that you had had with him.
Right.
Which led you to do a background check on this person. After doing just a quick Google search.
Well, yeah, and so I've always, the thing that narcissistic and dysfunctional toxic families do is they try to feed their narrative to everyone in the family and get you to doubt your own intuition. When something feels wrong inside, they gaslight you and try to make you act like you're crazy for feeling upset or having any emotions or any of that, right? So the goal is to try to get you to ignore your gut feelings about things and just listen to what they say and follow their agenda, because that's what makes life easy for them. So I think it's part of my ADHD that saved me is I had a very strong connection with my intuition. And part of it was the no filter, but I kind of didn't care if they didn't like what I said. I was telling the truth, and there's nothing wrong with telling the truth. And so I guess it would technically get me in trouble sometimes, but I was listening to my intuition, and they couldn't break that in me. And that was part of why the harm was so consistent and so malicious, because they realized that they weren't going to be able to break me. So they had to do more. They had to pit my siblings against me. They had to make up stories to disconnect me from my siblings. So the fact that there's other people in my family that maybe, especially initially, gave this new partner of hers more of a longer leash with the benefit of the doubt than I did, was because they were actually in that trained, manipulative family dynamic that told them to ignore their gut feeling. Oh no, nobody can be that bad. No, you're just being negative, which I was told a million times. But when you say the thing first about, or you speak out and say, this is wrong, something's wrong, at the first sign of negative behavior, because if you call something out, or like we've had this discussion where if I say, something's wrong, you don't want to let it build up and fester and become a bigger issue. You want them to say, oh gosh, sorry. Like if he told her to shut up and, oh gosh, I don't know where that came from, I'm really sorry. And then he like grabbed her and snuggled with her and he's apologized to me. Whoa, I don't know where that came from. He probably would have been able to, put on this facade a little longer. I would have had more contact with her. But it wasn't something that he was sorry for doing. It wasn't a natural behavior for him to own a mistake and say that he did something. That, my intuition was, in that moment, I was shocked, and I was also like, oh, this is bad. Right? So I did the background check after this behavior, after repeated efforts, and even asking her, is there something I did wrong? Like, you're not talking to me, you're not responding. It's not just, one text here or there. It's literally any time we try to contact. That's why we tried to set up a time. I know she says she's busy at work and then she forgets. So, okay, can we set up a time that'll work for you? Like, I think that's pretty accommodating. That's what we do too. Hey, can we set up a time to chat later? we have a lot of stuff going on. You know, our kids are busy and stuff. Hey, can we set up a time to talk about this? And we do that. And then we would be ghosted. I mean, it happened multiple times. I didn't ever put, after that time with the kids, I never trusted that she would do it again. I wasn't going to put my kids through being disappointed again. So unless there was another time I called when she said she was going to talk to them, and I did it privately to see if she would answer before I got the kids, and she didn't. So I won't do that again. But so I first Googled his name and found a DUI. This was in 2020, and I found a DUI from 2017, and it had his like mugshot and everything. So I mean, people get DUIs, so, you know, that it, in my mind, at that point was, maybe it's just one DUI and nothing else.
Right. Doesn't make him a bad person.
Doesn't make him a bad person. People make mistakes, right? So, but with the behaviors and the behavior of my sister, then seeing that, I was more concerned. So I did the background check, and if you've experienced being scapegoated in your family or being in a toxic family unit, you know that in order to be heard or even given a chance to be heard, you have to have documentation. You have to have proof. You have to have, I mean, I remember being grounded and having to make like a plan of what I was going to do differently to take to my dad. Cause he never said, you're grounded for 2 weeks or you're grounded for, you know, this weekend. He just said, you're grounded until further notice, which is so manipulative and controlling, so that you are constantly supply for him to feed his, oh, are you kissing his ass today so that you can be ungrounded? It was so hard for me to do. It was awful. But you had to go with all this proof, all these reasons, understanding what you did wrong and all of that. So part of my training was knowing I can't just come to these family members with, you know, this is her behavior. It's out of character. She's doing these things that just, I'm shocked that she's doing. And not necessarily that they're bad, but in combination with, you know, his behavior and her lack of effort even for my kids was, all of it together was really concerning. And having that interaction with him on the phone with my gut saying something's really wrong, and me coming to them and saying, he told her to shut up. Well, Angie, you know, I can just picture like their response. Well, Angie, was he shut up? Like, haha. Like, no, he said, well, that's how you heard it. It would, anything I said, if I'm actually saying my experience was that, it would be ridiculed. It didn't matter what I said. They were going to
find a way to
find a way to twist it and make it so I'm overreacting. I'm dramatic. So I needed proof. And I was like, I'm going to do the background check. And I hope it's green. I hope that I can ease that gut feeling by getting this proof. And if not, then I can take these experiences that I've been witnessing with this proof in order to see how we can come together as a family to support her so she's not in a dangerous situation. And when they found out that I did the background check, because I trusted my older brother, and I trusted that he cared and he knew my relationship with my sister, or that we were both adults and he didn't need to treat me like crap. But my mistake going to him with that assumption, I told him about doing the background check and finding information that was terrifying. So he not only had the one DUI that I found just by a Google search, he had multiple DUIs as well as a sexual assault felony charge.
Conviction.
And I take that to my older brother, and he says to me, well, you don't know. He was trying to tell me how court system works and how, he was trying to...
he mansplained the law to you.
How the law works, even though...
Instead of absorbing the information that you came to him with, and...
with the thought of, oh, my sister, someone I love and care about, is alone with this person.
Yeah, the concern was never... He never showed any concern for your sister who could possibly be in a dangerous situation.
Right.
With behavior that you've witnessed and reported. That, honestly, he was on the call with him the first time.
Right.
And witnessed. And with the information that you found in the background check, the concern was never for the safety of your younger sister. It was immediately pointed at you, and you were an instigator. You were a meddler. You found information
right.
that could help protect someone that you love, and instead you were attacked for finding that information.
Right.
You acted maliciously by digging deeper because you trusted your intuition.
Right. And here's the thing. If the background check was green, which I was hoping it would be, their whole narrative of me doing the background check, the reason I did the background check, again, none of them talked to me about this. But they know my intentions. That's how they're spreading this, is that I did the background check so I can have something to hold against him later. But if it was green, there'd be nothing to hold against him.
Right.
So...
And that was the narrative. It became, who told you, your brother or your dad?
No, or maybe I've never talked to my dad about it.
Maybe it was your younger sister who said... You just want that information to hold so that you can hold it against him later or use it later. And
she said that in her text
right.
before the wedding invitation was revoked. The wedding invitation was revoked, yeah.
But really, you stated up front. You said, I found these things. How much do you actually know about this person that you met 8 months ago and now live with? How much do you really know about that person? You weren't holding anything back. You gave her all of the information and said, this is concerning.
Well, I didn't share everything that was in it because we did it at a certain point, but in the beginning I didn't even know that she knew about that I did the background check. I was trying to talk to our immediate family to see what we should do, because I also, in finding that information, I started researching domestic violence resources to, okay, what's the best way to handle this? Because I've never had to do this, but I know it exists. And I actually knew that it could be very dangerous for her if she got that information from me and confronted him with it after he's been hiding it from her, lying to her about what it actually is. She would be in a very dangerous situation. So I was in a position of wanting to protect her and also keeping I wanted to tell her everything, but I also knew that if she confronted him and said, hey, Angie said this was the information, she shared it with me, like she shared these documents, that he could rage and kill her. So it was very hard, but we decided, me and my older sister and my younger brother, as we were talking about it, that we just need to share it within our family. And then if we have a time where she's not with him, and we can share it with her and kind of talk to her about what is in there and how she feels and what supports she needs and all of that. But he can't be there, which didn't happen. He was always monitoring or right there on a call. She just didn't have, he completely isolated her, and it seems like he has control over who she talks to, when she talks to them. And the fact that he's constantly around when she's like on the phone with people just shows like he won't let her have a private conversation.
Right.
And when she finally called me back that one time, and she was sitting in her car in like a parking lot, and I was like, oh, where are you? And she's like, oh, I'm just about to go to the grocery store. I immediately just said what I thought. It's like, are you not allowed to talk to me in your house? And she was like, oh, no, this was like just a good time. And I don't believe that. And I could tell that she was uncomfortable, but I made it light, like, are you not allowed to talk to me in your house? But I knew that's what was going on. Like, she had to secretly, like, call me.
And maybe it wasn't even that she had to be secretive about it, but she knew that if she tried to make a phone call in the house, that he would essentially take it over, because
right.
Your mom has said it, your older brother has said it, I think your dad has even said it to your younger brother.
Right.
That's how we know that anytime any one of them would talk to her,
they were talking to them.
But he would inevitably take over the conversation. That was verbatim from your older brother. He would say, anytime I tried to talk to your younger sister, he would just take over the conversation. He would literally take the phone from her, and the conversation would just be to him.
Right.
So in that instance, she probably knew, okay, well, if I want any semblance of a normal conversation, I have to do it in a parking lot at the grocery store.
Right, which is part of the control. And the fact that she has to tiptoe around just like being herself and having the relationships that she has already had in her life that are important to her, that's another sign. But the funniest thing, it's not funny, but I think the most obvious thing about hearing stories and accusations coming from other people, and how you said my younger brother's referring, like, you guys have to talk because it's like a game of telephone, like this person has this story, this person, and I'm like, I don't even know where these stories are coming from. They're literally being made up. And he's like, we all just need to get in a room and talk about it. But here's the problem. When someone's doing a smear campaign and they're lying and they're not telling the truth and they're making up stories and they're saying things you didn't say, if they hear your side of the story, or if they're confronted with all the people that they've told different versions of this to tweak it to the person that they're trying to manipulate, if they're in a room with all those people, they're going to know he's lying, which is exactly what happened when we had our emergency a week before the wedding FaceTime call that my older brother convinced my younger brother to gather me and my older sister, the four of us, to come together as siblings to help protect my sister. I called him out and I said to my older brother, you've been talking shit about me for God knows how long. Like, you are fueling this fire. You're the reason why she's at this point where she's about to marry this person. And he was like, I've never talked shit about you. And there's two people on the FaceTime call who have told me the shit he said about me. I didn't even ignore. I was like, no, I know what you said. You don't have to lie about it. Move along with whatever you were saying. Like, he even admitted at one point, yeah, I told mom and dad that I didn't agree with how you were handling stuff. Okay, what does that mean? What did you tell them? Because I don't go to them and say, I don't like the way is handling this. I tell them what is actually happening. Right?
Right. It's a classic Mrs. Doubtfire situation.
What?
He's trying to be two people,
right?
Two different people with the same audience at the same time in the same place. You can't do it. You can't keep up the charade.
You crumble and your face melts. Isn't that what happens?
Yeah.
His face,
his pie he couldn't get it all back on, so he had to do the pie on the face to hide the fact that it was actually Robin Williams and not Mrs. Doubtfire.
Right.
Same thing.
It's really not. It's a good depiction, but it's not. But that leads me to number 3, the complete denial. So if you confront the perpetrator with the rumors and the negative shift in the conversation, they deny all. Like, I've never talked shit about you. I never told to not have you in her life. No, but you kept saying I was trying to break them up when that's not what I was trying to do. And that's not what I said. And they'll deny everything. And with narcissists, they rarely own up to their wrongdoings, only if it will benefit them temporarily. And then they'll play the victim. You know, he was in a situation and saying that he never talked shit about us, but the whole reason we came to that sibling FaceTime was because my sister's partner had threatened to kill my younger brother if he showed up to the wedding with his liberal bullshit views. Is that how he said it?
That was part of it.
To my older brother, he said this to them when they were running through their wedding rehearsal, because my older brother was supposed to officiate. And so he said he was running through this stuff, and my sister's partner just kept talking, and just threw out a threat at my younger brother, to which my older brother in that moment defended him and went off on him and came to us, initially telling us, Val and Angie, you were right. I should have listened to you. I didn't handle it the way you did. I don't think any of us handled it exactly the same way, but you were right. Now I can't go to the wedding. Now, you know, I have to remove myself as well, and we can't be there to quote unquote support her. And then having a few days pass, and he ghosts my younger brother, and we see pictures of the wedding afterward that are posted online, and he officiated. He told us all of these horrible things and how we were right and that she wasn't safe, and if he hasn't physically harmed her, he will. And then because we didn't bow to him and say, oh, thank God you're finally seeing the light 2.5 years later. And oh my gosh, yeah, you were wrong, but now you're right. And so what do, big brother? We called him out and said, the only reason it's at this point is because you, A, refused to listen to us, and you spread all these lies, and you allowed him. Like, that behavior, when there's a narcissist who uses people to manipulate and get what they want, when they see a dysfunctional family, it is like a kid in a candy store. It's like, oh my gosh, here we go. Oh, I can break them up. So is it guaranteed that she wouldn't be with this harmful person who cut me out of her life, cut her older sister out of her life, threatened to kill her twin brother, but also wouldn't it be better if we all were on the same team and supporting her and letting her know? Isn't there more of a chance? Whereas, how confusing is it for her to probably in her gut know something's wrong and this isn't okay, and really being broken up and upset about having to push her sisters out of her life and not having a connection with our kids, which I feel is true. I don't know, but I feel like that's true for her. And to have... Oh, I lost track of my thought. To have... Oh, ADHD is so tough. Okay, take a breath. To have that mixed messaging. There we go. I found it. See? Just gotta pause. To have those mixed messages when you're already internally like, I care about this person. I feel like I can help them. They're not all bad. And here's the thing. My dad wasn't all bad. He was mostly bad. My older brother wasn't all bad. Mostly bad. Of course he's not going to be all bad. She would just be like, I'm done. It's manipulation. It's hot and cold. There's love bombing. There's, there's a whole cycle of abuse. But it lets you hold on to that one good moment a long time ago, or the future faking idea of it'll get better right after the wedding. We'll be able to talk. I haven't talked to her. I haven't talked to her in close to 3 years now. So I think having the denial of the lies, not being able to come together and have a hard, honest conversation with these people makes it very difficult to navigate and support someone. It's a very helpless feeling when you're on the receiving end of this, and it's part of the reason why I just stepped back and I didn't talk for a very long time about it. Okay, and then the last one, let's move on to the last one, is the gaslighting. So not only spreading false information about you, but they also manipulate the narrative to make it seem like you're the one at fault. So it's basically like large scale gaslighting. Like overall, this is the message. They all think that I'm selfish and I'm meddling and I don't want her to be happy, which is, none of it's true.
Well, you became the bad guy for doing a background check.
Right.
When
I didn't commit the crimes.
You didn't commit any of the crimes. The fact that you did the background check became the issue instead of your sister being in a dangerous situation with someone who's proven that they are a dangerous person.
Right. Right. And the whole narrative of like, I'm selfish for wanting to have a relationship with her. Or, my older brother even, I found out that he was saying, oh, I'm really concerned about Angie's weight. She's really skinny. It's probably because she's on drugs, aka my ADHD medication prescribed by my doctor, which is a completely ignorant comment by him, but it was used to make me seem like I'm crazy
He said that to your older sister.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And my younger brother. I'm probably not exactly verbatim, but that I'm really concerned about her weight. And I remember saying to my younger brother when he said that to me, I said, if he's really concerned about my weight, why hasn't he come to me? Because my older sister was concerned about my weight, and my pattern when I get emotionally overwhelmed is I get very sick to my stomach. I feel very nauseous. And I think this is fairly common, not even just with ADHD, but getting emotionally overwhelmed and feeling like you can't eat, feeling nauseous, just completely, in a depressed state. And the fact that I was losing this connection, I was so confused. My sister wouldn't talk to me or have a conversation or even tell me what I did wrong that she thought I did wrong so I could even attempt to mend it. There were all these lies being spread about me. I was so confused and disconnected and heartbroken. And so, yeah, I did fall into a depression and I was really struggling. I had a ton of grief, which we'll talk about in the next episode, but for him to basically try to put a wedge between my relationship with her and spread all these lies and talk all this crap about me and do all this harm and then turn around and say tell other people but don't say anything to me, that he's concerned about my weight, is evil. He is doing all these things to cause harm that is heartbreaking and devastating to me. And my natural body response is to be nauseous and not want to eat and feel sick. And then he's mocking me and acting like I'm a drug addict because I take medication for my ADHD.
And it's not really like you were much skinnier than you.
No.
I mean, you're a thin person,
right?
And so, I mean, both of our boys are. I'm tall and thin. You're tall and thin. Like it.
But it's also the not bringing it to me.
Right.
Like if you're concerned,
but it wasn't anything. You're like you said, your older sister was concerned about it. She brought it to your attention.
We talked about it.
She also offered a nutrition plan.
Right.
Like you talked to a nutritionist about it.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah, you actually said, oh, you're right, and went to your doctor and talked to your doctor about it.
Right.
In that situation. But that was a different scenario too. So.
Well, but I think that's the part of it that it's hard for outsiders to read because, it seems like he's concerned. And I remember my younger brother being like, no, he was really concerned. I said, if he was really concerned, he would have come to me. It's ridiculous because he said the same thing to my older sister. So, but on a side note, I also want to mention when I brought up Angie, you're being negative, Angie whiner, Angie dramatic, all that. It's not negative. We're not being negative by talking about the abuse that happened. It's negative that the abuse happened. Us talking about it and telling the truth of what we experienced is not a smear campaign, although the abusers will project that onto us because it does not make them look good. Their goal is usually to look good to everyone and everyone think they're perfect and there's nothing wrong. That's why they scapegoat you. But when they make up lies and tell half-truths to assassinate your character and play the victim, and you go out and you own everything that happened to you, it's your story, it's your life. If they wanted to look better, they should have treated me better and acted better. So it's important to understand the underlying intent, because the abuser is creating the smear campaign to have, we talked about it before, the flying monkeys and the other people triangulating, separating people to do their dirty work, to manipulate everyone. And us telling the story, it's because we're interested in people understanding the experience and empowering people who are in a similar situation, in order, like, the education, the awareness, the being able to hold your intuition, as well as using your brain to analyze these situations and see things for what they are. And because when you're not given information, or information's withheld, or you're manipulated into believing something is another way, yeah, you may make a decision based on that information, but you're making a decision based on a lie. If you are actually given the information, then you have a choice to make a decision that is best for you, no matter what that is. But when you're being lied to and manipulated, you make a decision based on someone else's narrative and what someone else wants. So us talking about it isn't us doing anything wrong. And I'm sure they'll, put us down and, say we're saying you're trying to make me look bad, but that's really not the case. That's you're wrong for doing the background check. I didn't commit the crimes. I found the information, I understand the information, and I'm sharing the information. Not the same thing. So this is long, but it's very important. So what to do if you're on the receiving end of a smear campaign. So realizing that I've basically been going through this smear campaign my whole life, but it's been especially vicious over the last 4 years. The first thing you feel is confusion. You don't really understand. I didn't understand why they would even think these things, or let alone be talking to someone else about me in such a harmful way. And I also, it's beyond heartbreaking that most of these people, other than my sister's partner, are my immediate family members that are doing this. So people I previously trusted, I assumed they loved and cared about me the way I did for them. And the next level of that heartbreak is someone who doesn't know me at all, which is my sister's partner, was able to turn my closest sibling against me by creating this narrative around my character to hide who he is. And that's I might need to pause. Like, how could she even believe the awful things that are being said about me? She knows me. Gosh. So, when you're in this situation, first step is to minimize your involvement. So I made the choice after that initial call with my older brother that I'm done. I can't believe I trusted that we were adults and we both cared about my younger sister as family. So I'm not sharing anything. I'm not talking about I've tried my entire life to no end to get them to understand me. I'm done. The other people who are being manipulated by this person will need to see their despicable behavior on their own. Because me bringing it to their attention only allows them to point the finger at me as the problem. And I don't need to defend myself because I don't have anything to defend. I did nothing wrong. I spent almost 40 years trying to have a connection with my dad and my older brother. I'm done. They're not going to get it. They want attention and control over me, and it's never going to happen. So they will have no access to me again. Minimizing your involvement doesn't have to look like completely going no contact. But for me, that was the last straw for the two of them. I don't share anything with people until I feel completely safe to do so. The second thing you do, you kind of do these all together. I guess I shouldn't say it's just the second thing on the list, but you gather evidence. And boy, did I. Collecting evidence, emails, texts, social media posts, other people's accounts documented. It contradicts the lies that they continue to spread. Everything that I've discussed here and that I discuss, not just my feelings, the actual things that I'm discussing about other people, I have evidence. I have concrete evidence of them. And documentation is crucial to defend yourself if there becomes a legal situation. Like when I had to call the authorities to document the threat I received, which I'll talk about. And the officer was blown away by the amount of research that the documentation that I had. And he said, do exactly what you're doing. Everything you're doing will help your sister. He said, if there comes a time where your sister is able to see how much you love her, this will be it. And I knew I was doing what I had to be doing to protect myself and to protect her, and just doing the right thing. The third thing, maintain boundaries. So if possible, I know it's a privilege that I have to be able to go no contact. I know that's not, some people have to live, work with. There's a lot of different situations. So boundaries are important, whether you're limiting or cutting off contact with these individuals that are harming you. But any sort of boundaries to limit further manipulation or emotional distress, whether you're just holding them accountable, saying, no, you can't say that to me, or if you continue to talk to me that way, I'm going to leave. Those are absolutely your rights as a human being. Damage control is the fourth thing. So do what you can with damage control without retaliating directly. A lot of times the experts say to involve like contacting your friends and colleagues and coworkers and like managing your social media, which I did. I blocked and kept the people attacking at bay, and I just didn't want them to have access to my life because I don't want that. But I didn't really do the damage control step, like seeking out people. But when something came to my attention, I was able to address it and give my side of the story, like with my aunt. I did that as well. And I think part of the damage control is also something that just happens over time. And that's part of the reason why I want to speak out and do the podcast, is because I know a lot of things, lies are being spread and narratives are being, I don't even know. Like I go out in a social situation, especially this time of year, and you don't know what's going to come at you when you already know a little bit of what's come out. You never know who's going to have a story or who's going to confront you with the narrative that they've spread about you. And so it's really heavy to carry that and to stand within your values and not self-isolate. But I think the damage control for me was if a narrative story came to me and someone was asking my side of the story, I told them the truth. There's two more things. Focusing on self-care. So focusing on your mental, physical, emotional well-being by taking actions according to your values. Mine, like integrity and honesty. Continuing my healing journey by implementing these new patterns of healthier habits to protect myself. Because some of the habits in my dysfunctional family training were things I wasn't aware that I was even doing that allowed me, my over-explaining, my constantly trying to defend myself, my just telling the truth no matter who heard it. It wasn't setting me up for feeling the best after. And I kept coming across feeling bad afterwards, still misunderstood, still frustrated, and allowing myself to start implementing new patterns that are healthier, that align, where I can now say, like, my growth, oh, that didn't bother me as much, or, oh, that was even kind of funny. I could have written that response because I knew that's what they were going to say. When these things before would have taken me out for days and I would have ruminated and been really struggling with it. And the last thing is seeking support. So first I went to my therapist, who is trauma-informed, for support and help. Then, as well as allowing my older sister and my younger brother to see these behaviors by me pulling back and not saying anything and allowing them to just witness what they're doing, they were able to come back to me with support, and we've supported each other through this. So I've sought legal support through police, professionals with domestic violence who give support to victims, as well as educating on myself with all this, because again, awareness, knowledge, education is power. You own your decisions. You are in control of your own life when you do that. And I think even with this harm and this grief, and knowing that these supports that I've sought out and the actual connection I now have with my younger brother and my older sister is more than I ever had with them before. It's more meaningful, it's real. We can have hard conversations and we can support each other and we can have differing views and talk about them, and it's wonderful. And to have multiple professionals within trauma or abuse backgrounds tell you you're doing everything right, keep doing what you're doing, is really validating. And also, even when seeking all that support, you're still going to have a little of that helpless feeling, because you can't control what anybody else says and you can't control what anybody else is doing. And I don't want to, but I've always been like, if you don't like me, just leave me alone. And I never understood why they couldn't. But the reason why they can't is because they've done so much harm. If they just leave me alone and they don't try to belittle and demean me and have other people attacking me. Oh, this is something too. Just popped back into my head. My dad always used to say, when there's multiple people telling you something that you're doing is bothering them, you need to look at yourself and figure out what you're doing wrong, which I don't necessarily disagree with. But in my family situation, when he's telling me I do something wrong, and then he's telling my brother that I'm doing that wrong, and he's telling my sister what to think, and he's telling my mom what to think, and he's telling his band director buddy what to think, and they all come to me and say the same thing because of the narrative he's spreading, that's not the same thing. That's him ganging up and trying to put the ownership on me.
It's a smear campaign.
Yeah, that's what it is. So we'll leave you with this question of self-reflection. How can you maintain your emotional clarity and protect your reputation when confronted with false accusations or a smear campaign from a narcissist? What would you do? Till next time.